We have more new updates on iOS 27 Beta 2. Apple just raised prices on nearly every product, and it's actually worse than you think. Apple is about to make the biggest change yet to its M-series chip strategy, new iPhone 18 and MacBook Ultra details, and more, all in today's episode of Apple Weekly. Okay, so let's start by talking about iOS 27 Beta 2, which was released earlier on in the week. So I did make a full video and a short video talking about all the new features in iOS 27 Beta 2. But there's one feature, I guess one change with Beta 2 that really is not something you can see, but it's something you can feel. And it's the fact that this is probably the best second beta I've ever used. So I told you guys with iOS 27 Beta 1, that's the best first beta I've ever used. This is the best second beta I've ever used as well, because a lot of times we've seen where Beta 1s will start out strong. Beta 1 will be amazing, and then Beta 2 or Beta 3 completely ruins the experience. It goes backwards. But that was not the case here with iOS 27. And the reason I say that is because iOS 27 Beta 2 fixed pretty much every single issue I and most people had. So we're talking about things like the screenshot bug. We're talking about things like when you go to the lock screen and you dismiss the now playing, how that would just completely stay disappeared forever. That was fixed as well. And performance got better. Battery life got better. I'll talk more about that later on in this video, but pretty much across the board, it was a win. It fixed every issue I personally had except for one, which we'll get to in a moment. But it's been a phenomenal second beta. But I want to talk about even more new features in it as well, because I did make a video showing a ton of new features in Beta 2, but there are even more to discuss. And the first one I want to talk about is actually inside of Mail. So if we go into a message in our Mail where we have like a package coming, like a delivery, you'll see up top we now have this section where it shows, it was delivered yesterday, and then we have manage, and we also have this drop down right here. If you tap on that drop down, it will say manage order, open in wallet, and track orders. You can actually open this up in the wallet application now straight from here. You can also tap on manage, and it will go into your account. In this case, it was for Amazon, which is pretty neat. But if you go down on this drop down here and go to open in wallet, you can see it will open up right here on this page and show you all the details about your order, which is really cool. It's really bringing everything more, just more integrated, I guess, because the wallet application with the order tracking has been wonky for like at least a year now. So it seems to be working a lot better in iOS 27, and it's nice to have something like this added as well. I also have to say that one of the best features in iOS 27 is not going to be anything flashy, but if you have an Apple TV, it's going to be really nice now, because with Beta 2, you are now able to update your Apple TV from your iPhone. Before, you'd have to go to your Apple TV, go to software updates, and do it from your TV itself. You could not do it remotely. Well, now with iOS 27 here in Beta 2, you can update your Apple TV, the version, the software on it, without actually having to go onto your Apple TV physically. I also recently got this pop-up right here, and this appears to be new as well. So it shows 7 topics shared, and this is where it just shows which applications have access to your health data, but it looks a little bit different here than how it looked in iOS 26. And also, if you take a look at this screenshot right here, I was actually sending out a text, and take a look at the create Genmoji down here. So this is actually something where we have suggesting Genmojis. It's a new iOS 27 feature, and it's actually been really good. So like if I type out this full sentence right here, you can see I typed out a full sentence, and it shows the Genmoji, suggestion there is Croatia flags in the street. So not necessarily exactly what I was trying to say. I was saying people running in the street with it, but it was able to pick up on that little section there, and it would create a Genmoji based on that context in my message without me, typing anything else. It shows that. And then right above that, you can also see another new iOS 27 feature, not new in Beta 2, but the little send indicator on a per message basis. Now, if we head into the wallet application and tap on the 3 dots up here, we do have insights. So I did cover this in my Beta 2 What's New video, but I did just want to expand on it a little bit here when I have more time. So this allows you to see spending insights and more. Now, this appears to not be working in the US yet, so a lot of the EU users are able to see this. We can see, so basically when you add your card, you will be able to see spending insights and like where your money is going and if it's smart to be putting your money in those places and things like that. So it says to see spending insights, recurring transactions, account balances, and more. So I'm imagining it will also be a great way to see like your subscriptions that you have, your monthly subscriptions, so you can maybe see about canceling some of those that you maybe forgot about. It's going to be a great new feature, so I'm hoping hopefully in beta 3 it actually works properly with the cards you already have added, because as of now, when you go to continue, it just keeps making you reload in a card. So it's just not working properly in beta 2, but for at least in the US, but it is a really cool feature that's definitely going to put some of the other third-party apps out there out of business. Now, I kind of downplayed this next feature here, but in iOS 27 beta 2, if you take a look down here in the bottom right-hand corner, the little yellow outline around the indicators there is a really nice touch. And like I said, I underplayed this, but when I was actually out using my main device out in the wild, it was really nice to see this feature here. So this is really great for the macro lens as well. So you can see that it has the little circle, the little outline around the macro flower there. So if I tap it on, you can see it's on. And of course, when it goes to night mode, you can see it's indicated up top, but also down here at the bottom. Just a great feature. It's just a small thing, but it is a nice little touch. Now, also, like I just briefly mentioned, you are able to remove the now playing on your lock screen right here. But in beta 1, as you guys know, it would just never reappear. Like you'd have to basically reboot your phone for it to reappear. But now it works a lot better. So if you go in here and you start playing the song again, or you start playing from a different application, it will come up, sometimes. So it's still not perfect. And a lot of times I've noticed I actually have to force quit the application. So this time it will for sure pop up. So every time you force quit it and then you start replaying, it will pop up for sure. So you can see that's a guaranteed way to get it back. But sometimes if you play and pause, it will come back as well. Now, something else that was added here in beta 2 was the Write with Siri right here in the keyboard in the predictive text section. But what I've noticed is that when you start copying text now and you go to paste it, it doesn't pop up every time anymore. So on my main device, I've noticed that when I copy text and this little paste menu right here that I was used to in beta 1, it barely pops up ever anymore. So there's definitely a bug going on here. It seems like the Write with Siri is just like the dominant one. So for some reason it's showing properly here right now, but on my main device, I've seen countless times where it just says Write with Siri instead of what I just copied, and I'm looking to just tap to paste it. Now, there is also one bug that still persists on beta 2. This is the only bug that I was talking about earlier that has not been fixed with beta 2, and it's driving me crazy. So when you get a text from an unknown number, an unknown sender, and you tap to go into that, it's just completely blank. So I've tried this on like 3 different devices, including my iPad. It's broken across the board on beta 1 and beta 2. So for some reason, when you go to view an unknown sender's message, like it shows you the preview of it, but when you tap to actually go into it, you can see right here, there's literally nothing. So it completely disappears for some reason, and that is still a bug in beta 2. And we'll talk more about the performance and the battery life a little bit later on in the video, along with what to expect next from iOS 27. But I also just need to give a shout out to the Apple Watch, watchOS 27 beta 2, because beta 1 completely drained the battery on my Apple Watch Ultra 3, and that came out later this week, the Ultra 3 version of watchOS 27 beta 2, and that fixed battery life for me. So my battery's not draining when I do a workout like it was in beta 1. So if you have an Apple Watch, just know that the second beta is much better. That was the only 27 beta that was giving me issues of any of them. So that's good to know that that has been fixed. But like I said, we'll talk more about iOS 27 here in a bit. Let's get into some of the other stories. And we cannot continue this video without talking about the biggest news of the week, maybe of the year for Apple so far, and that is the fact that they've raised prices on nearly every product, and it's not by just a little bit. So if you guys remember in last week's episode of Apple Weekly, we warned you that Apple prices are going to be increasing very soon, and that very soon just happened to be the very next week. So, this is warned about, and this is basically because of the memory shortage going on right now. But if you take a look right here, take a look at the prices, what they were and what they are now. So the average price increase is $246.67. But take a look at this right here. I mean, we have even the HomePod Mini was increased from $99 to $129. The Apple TV was the one that surprised me the most, I think. It went from $129 to $199. It's $250 for the, upgraded storage one, but that's just the starting price right there. The iPad Mini increased, the iPad Air, the iPad Pro. The MacBook Neo is a big one. That went up by $100. So that was $599. That was the big thing. Everybody was excited about $599. It's super cheap, but now it's $699. But when you take into account that the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro also increased in price, it still looks like a great deal. So I think MacBook Neo is still a good deal. But if you take a look here, the MacBook Air went from $1099 to $1299, MacBook Pro $1699 to $1999. And if you take a look all the way down here, take a look at the M3 Ultra Max Studio. This is the crazy one here. It went from $4,000 to $5,300. That is a $1,300 price increase that we didn't have just last week, or just, I guess, yesterday. And then we have the Vision Pro Pro, of course, that was increased by $200 for anybody out there still looking for a Vision Pro. So yeah, pretty crazy stuff. And also just know that these prices are going to be the new norm. Like there's no way Apple is just going to roll back prices and give you a sale because, you know, memory goes back to a regular level. Like, no, these are going to be the new prices for Apple moving forward. And you better believe, and Tim Cook actually hinted this as well, but you better believe that future products that were not discounted. So the iPhone, 17, a lot of people are surprised that the iPhones were not increased in price. But you better believe that the new iPhones coming are absolutely going to cost more. Like it may be as little as $50, it may be as much as $200 more than the iPhone 17 series. But you better believe that the new iPhones, including the foldable, have now gone up in the expected price. And the same goes for the AirPods and the Apple Watch as well. So AirPods maybe not, but the Apple Watch for sure, because that still has memory in it. So pretty much anything with memory, you're going to see a price increase. That's why the polishing cloth did not go up, because there's no memory in the polishing cloth. Now here's where it gets a little bit interesting, because in an interview with the Wall Street Journal, the chief business officer of Micron implied that Apple played a role in the current memory crunch. Now, as you might be aware, Micron is one of Apple's suppliers, and they said that Micron could not make investments during the memory market's last downturn when Micron's gross profits went negative, in part because, quote, certain customers took advantage to pay rock bottom prices. So notice how they did not name drop Apple, but it's pretty clear that they were targeting Apple with this statement here, because we all know that Apple is pretty much the only one in the industry who's able to get rock bottom prices with the deals that they cut with these, different suppliers. So basically Micron is saying that since Apple is paying such low dollars, that's what led to the crunch that we're having right now, at least partially. But there might be a way to mitigate this whole memory shortage issue right now and get the prices back to being a little bit lower. And that has to do with the Chinese, because we just got a fresh report from the Financial Times that shows Apple is trying to basically lobby the Trump administration to approve Chinese RAM. So they said this: Apple is lobbying the Trump administration for clearance to buy memory chips from CXMT, a Chinese company that the Pentagon has put on a blacklist because of alleged connections to the People's Liberation Army. Apple has waged a lobbying campaign to get the White House's blessing in order to ease the financial pressure of the rise in memory chip prices. Apple is not barred from buying chips from CXMT or YMTC, another Chinese memory chip maker, but the Pentagon has put both companies on its Chinese military company blacklist. The so-called 1260H list contains dozens of Chinese groups with alleged ties to the PLA that undermine U.S. national security. So my guess is that Apple will be able to use this Chinese RAM, this Chinese memory, for devices sold outside of the U.S. and the EU. I don't think there's any way they're going to get approved to do this for like U.S.-based devices, so maybe for like China, for Asia, and for like India, places like that, they may be seeing the cheaper RAM. They may be able to get approved to, supply that or get that as a supply and put that in those devices, but not for the US. That's my guess, at least. We'll have to wait and see what happens with this though. Okay, so now let's talk about the Apple Watch and watchOS 27, because as you're probably aware, watchOS 27 dropped support for so many Apple Watches. It was kind of unprecedented actually, because they dropped the Series 6, the Series 7, the Series 8, the SE2, and the Apple Watch Ultra 1. So 3 years of Apple Watches cut in one update. I cannot remember the last time that's happened. So that was pretty surprising. And we actually just got an explanation for why that was the case. They did an interview with TechRadar and they said this: the great new features in watchOS, including the capabilities of Siri AI and the new tap gesture, work best with the processing power that is in the Apple Watch Series 9 and later, Ultra 2 and later, and SE3. So a super vague comment from Apple as expected. Basically, I think it has everything to do with Siri AI. I think it's pretty clear at this point that all those Apple Watches were cut because Siri AI, one of the main features of watchOS 27, actually it is the main feature of watchOS 27, having Siri AI on your watch and being able to do things, hand off from your phone. Really awesome stuff you could do with that when it actually comes out for the Apple Watch. But basically, those watches that got cut did not have the compute, did not have the processing power to actually run Siri AI on their Apple Watch. So it makes sense, but it is still pretty sad for those who, got dropped support. But of course, as we all know, those watches are still going to get security updates. Like you're still going to get security patches and things like that, so it's not like you're just never going to get a software update again on your watch just because it's not compatible with watchOS 27. Now let's talk about the iPhone 18 and the iPhone 18e. Not the Pros, we're talking about the lower end models that are coming in the spring of next year. And the reason I want to talk about about them is because we just got new details that these devices are going to have 9 gigabytes of RAM, really weird number, and the A20 chip. So this comes from Ming-Chi Kuo, and he said this over on X. So he said, iOS 27 will bring tighter system level integration with Apple Intelligence. My latest industry check suggests Apple's lower end iPhones for the first half of 2027, powered by the A20 chip, will move to 9 gigabytes of RAM, and that's going to be 1.5 gigabytes and 6 dies, so 6 different dies of 1.5 gigs, and that's up from 8 gigs of RAM total, which was 4 dies of 2 gigs. And that was in the current A19 models to keep the system running smoothly under AI workloads. The 3 new high-end models for the second half of 2026, powered by the A20 Pro chip, will remain unchanged at 12 gigabytes, and that's going to be 8 dies of 1.5 gigs. So it's pretty funny to see 9 gigabytes of RAM. It's just such a funny number to see. You usually see even numbers with the RAM, like, 6, you see 8, you see 12. So it's just funny to see 9 there, and you're definitely going to see some missing features with only 9 gigs of RAM in the future for those base model devices, just as it's intended. And then speaking of the iPhone 18 series, we also heard about the potential upcoming price increases because according to analytics firm IDC, they're saying that we might see a $200 price increase on the 18 Pro and Pro Max. And then of course we have the foldable coming this year as well, and IDC thinks that that could have an average selling price of $2,500, with the higher storage tiers costing as much as $3,000. $3,000 for a foldable phone is crazy, but that might be the reality, especially after seeing these prices increase. That could be a reality come later on this year. Now let's talk about something else coming this year, and that is the M6 MacBook Pro. That's expected to come this year. We just got a new report from Mark Gurman that shows that Apple is targeting a late 2026 launch for the M6 MacBook Pro, which is sooner than we originally expected. And this is actually going to be Apple's first chip built on a 2nm process. So it's going to be a jump up from the 3nm process used ever since the M3 chip. And this M6 chip is expected to have a staggering 200 gigs a second of memory bandwidth versus about 153 with the M5. So a big jump there. It's also going to include a redesigned graphics processing unit, an updated memory architecture, and an upgraded neural engine. Now also in this same report, Gurman also touched on the upcoming, my most anticipated Mac actually, the upcoming M5 Ultra Mac Studio. And the specs on this thing are insane because he's saying this: Apple still plans to release one more chip for the current generation, the M5 Ultra. It's scheduled to arrive as early as this year as part of a new Mac Studio that has been postponed due to the supply and cost challenges. The M5 Ultra chip will have around 36 central processing unit cores and 80 GPU cores. Apple has also tested support for up to 768 gigs of memory in the M5 Ultra Mac Studio. So 768 gigs of RAM. I don't know who on earth would ever need that. I guess if you're doing really intensive AI stuff, but that is pretty insane. I don't even want to know the price of what that's going to be. All I know is I am going to be upgrading my M1 Ultra to the M5 Ultra, and it's probably going to be a massive difference in performance, which I'll do a video on that. But let's talk about the more exciting MacBook, the first of its kind MacBook that we could be seeing as soon as the end of this year, and that is the OLED touchscreen MacBook Pro. The MacBook Ultra is what it might be called, because we just got new reports on this as well from Mark Gurman, who said this: Apple's first ever touchscreen laptop will rely on the current high-end M5 chips rather than next generation silicon, though they're working on a follow-up model with future M7 processors. The MacBook models positioned at the top of Apple's lineup will arrive between late this year and early next year with the existing M5 Pro and M5 Max chips. In addition to adding touch displays, the MacBook Ultra will also use the iPhone's Dynamic Island interface and OLED displays. All 3 editions will be firsts for a Mac. And he says that the devices will also sport an updated industrial design, marking the first visual change to high-end MacBooks since 2021. So there are going to be a lot of changes, and now we know the chipset inside, because all along we were thinking it's probably going to be, either the high-end M5 or potentially M6. Now we're hearing it is going to be the existing M5 Pro and M5 Max chips inside of that device. And there's a reason we're not going to see the M6 Pro and the M6 Max chips inside of that MacBook, and that's because Apple's not going to release those at all. They're not going to be in any device because for the first time ever, Apple is skipping the high-end chips for the M6 series of Macs. That's a major pivot in their strategy. So Mark Gurman said this: Apple plans to debut a base M6 processor as early as this year for entry-level Macs, but in a first, the company will skip higher-end versions of that chip. Apple instead aims to introduce its next Pro and Max chips with the more advanced computing and graphics power in 2027 as part of the new M7 generation. Apple is doing this in order to fast-track technologies that it originally planned to release later. The change should help meet growing demand for on-device AI capabilities and more graphics-intensive software. And he says that the M7 Max are expected in the first half of 2027. Apple is also planning higher-end M7 Pro, M7 Max, and M7 Ultra chips. Apple is also planning the higher-end M7 Pro and M7 Max chips for as early as the end of 2027, while the M7 Ultra is on track for 2028. And he says that the M7 line is designed primarily around major advancements to on-device AI processing, and he says that the base version is slated to support about 240 gigs a second of memory bandwidth. That's impressive. So it's going to be really interesting to see Apple skip a generation of Pro, Max, and Ultra chips. We're just going to go straight to M7, which is pretty insane. Something pretty new that we've not seen before. But of course, we all know that the MacBook Ultra is not the only Ultra device coming potentially this year. We also have the iPhone Ultra, the iPhone foldable, because we have new details on that as well. So this comes from Digital Chat Station over on Weibo, and he's saying that the iPhone Ultra 2 has already been approved. And he said that the second generation foldable is expected to use the same display panel as the original iPhone Ultra launching this fall. And Mark Gurman did actually corroborate this as well, because he also said that Apple's going to launch the iPhone Ultra 2 in fall 2027 alongside the 20th anniversary iPhone models. So if you were still for some reason somebody doubting that we're going to see a foldable iPhone, the fact that we already have a second generation approved and like starting on that process tells you, pretty much guarantees, that we are going to see a foldable iPhone this year. Now let's move over to our iPhone once again, because I want to talk more about iOS 27, Beta 2, the future of iOS 27, and more. So first off, the performance. I have to say performance on iOS 27 Beta 2 is a good bit better than it was on Beta 1. So like I mentioned in my original follow-up video for Beta 1, I did have a random respring, like a random reboot, and it lasted forever. Like I was on the Apple logo for like a good 2 minutes, and then it eventually came back. So that was super annoying. I also had apps randomly freeze. Sometimes it would just show up blank, like it would load the screen and then it would just completely go blank. I've not had any of that in Beta 2. Like I've had zero crashes, I've had zero major issues like that, I've had zero resprings, nothing. So performance has been rock solid here on 27 Beta 2 on every device I've used it on. Also, I did run a fresh Geekbench here, and you can see what we scored compared to the original run down here, the one at June 22nd at 1:01 p.m. So it is a little bit lower than that, but you can see that the scores are still pretty solid. It was better than when I first installed the software, at least for, actually, no, it's not. It's actually worse. What am I talking about? So it is worse for some reason than the original run that I did here on Beta 2, which is actually backwards. It's not usually like that. But yeah, so Geekbench scores, again, don't always tell the full story. It's more about how it actually feels in day-to-day usage. And the fact that I'm using it on my main device every single day, I have a lot of experience with this second beta, and I can tell you that performance is absolutely better. It's not just the bug fixes, just more fluid and everything all around. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to ask you guys, are you still having indexing issues? So I know with Beta 1, pretty much everybody was still indexing, but now that you're on Beta 2, I've really barely seen anybody that still has an indexing message on their settings. So you guys let me know in a comment down below. Has your indexing finally been fixed? And also for Siri AI, are you finally off the wait list? Because it seems like after Beta 2, a lot more people got approved and got through, and they're no longer on the wait list for Siri AI. So you guys let me know if you're still experiencing the wait list here, and or also the indexing that you saw on the settings. Now, as far as battery life goes, I have to say battery life has also improved. However, it wasn't really bad in Beta 1. So I thought the performance was worse than battery life in Beta 1. But when I take a look at my phone here and take a look at my battery usage here, I am using quite a bit of battery on my main device. So 163% on one of these days on Wednesday. But yeah, I've noticed that battery life maybe a little bit better than beta 1. I think a lot of times that we're seeing better battery life is because we're having less crashes, we're having less issues with applications like stuttering and having to force quit and things like that. So I think it's kind of a byproduct of the performance. So battery life is most likely going to be better. So I'm sitting at 98%. I mean, that's pretty dang good. So maybe it is a little bit better because I did drain a little bit more battery in my last week's video, my last week's Apple Weekly. So yeah, actually just seeing that makes me think that battery life is a little bit better here, in beta 2, maybe more than a little bit better in beta 2. So you guys let me know your experience down in the comments below. It wasn't a big difference to me on my main device, but I'm also using this thing a lot lately. So I don't know, you guys let me know what your thoughts are on both the performance and the battery life. Now let's go ahead and talk about what to expect next from Apple. So next week is going to be the final week of June, the final days of June, at least until Tuesday there. So you can see that we're not going to get a beta next week. So we are still on a 2-week release schedule at this point. So that means that we should be seeing the third beta for iOS 27 for developers on the week of July 6th. So after that 4th of July weekend, that is when we should see the next beta for iOS 27, iOS 27 beta 3. And then after we get that third developer beta, we should see the public beta get released as early as later that week or the following week, the week of July 13th. So it could be either one of those timeframes. We've seen both over time. So we could be expecting that in mid-July. And then of course the final release is going to be down here in September at some point. And then unfortunately, we do not have a crazy AirTag story this week. There's nothing really going on out there. So if you guys have any crazy AirTag stories, you guys know you can always send those to me over on Instagram, just at Brandon Butch over on Instagram. That's a great way to send those over to me. I know a lot of you guys already have, but it's great to know you could do that as well. But anyways, guys, that is it for this week. A pretty crazy, a pretty hectic week for Apple in terms of the price increases. Apple trying to get the Chinese RAM. We got the updates about the upcoming phones and the Macs. So pretty interesting week this week across the board. It is going to be quite boring next week without a iOS beta release. But anyways, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you did, let me know with a comment down below. Of course, give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.